At what point does Christianity become a part of this indigenous psychedelic tradition? Oh, hello my friends of the Psychedelic Renaissance, it's Tom Hatzis, your psychedelic historian, and this is Alvar Nunez Cabeza de Vaca, the Christian shaman slave. Before we get started, if you're into this kind of content, please give this video a like and a share, subscribe to the Psychedelic Historian YouTube channel, and hit that bell icon so that you're notified every time I post a new video. Also, it'd be great to link up on Instagram. Find me at Psychedelic Historian. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Alvar Nunez Cabeza de Vaca was a Spanish explorer who, in 1528, became shipwrecked on an island called Galveston Island, which is on the eastern coast of what we today call Texas. He was stranded for 8 years and was only one of 4 out of 500 voyagers to survive the expedition. The 3 others to survive the voyage were Estebanico, arguably the first African Muslim to explore. I guess he later converted to Christianity, so we'll just say he was the first African, well, arguably the first African to explore the Americas. The other 2 survivors were Andres Dorantes de Carranza and Alonso Castillo de Maldonado. De Vaca learned several languages and dialects and gives us a sober account of the things he experienced. He later published his diary of the account, titled La Relación, which is an anthropological treasure trove of indigenous customs. At one point, De Vaca became a trader. One of the items he traded were seashells, which they used to cut a certain fruit that looks like a bean, used by the locals for medicinal purposes, and for dances and festivals. De Vaca was most likely talking about the mezcal bean, a powerful psychedelic and purgative that grows in the pods of the mountain laurel tree. Along his travels, De Vaca notes a variety of indigenous psychedelic traditions. Unfortunately, he doesn't give us too much detail, but rather just notes things here or there when he comes across them. So we aren't exactly sure as to the depths of what these ceremonies entailed. However, we can look to other later sources, like some that describe the rituals of the Iowa, to see if maybe that's something along the lines of what De Vaca was talking about. The Iowa would drink some kind of mezcal bean potion which would keep them stimulated and dancing all night. By sunrise, due to the awesome power of the mezcal bean and all the dancing, the revelers would vomit in a prayerful crescendo. They believed that this cleansed them of evil spirits. Perhaps that, or something like it, was the medicinal effect to which De Vaca refers. At some point during their journey, De Vaca, Estebanico, Maldonado, and de Carranza were all taken as slaves. Now, one of the things we're not supposed to talk about in psychedelic spaces is that if you were a successful healer in those days, like you were really good at healing people, you were under threat of being kidnapped by other communities and forced to heal their peoples. Such was the fate of Estebanico, De Vaca, de Carranza, and Maldonado. They were taken as slaves by a group of Coalticans, and I just wanted to say, when I use that word Coaltican, I'm not referring to a specific group, but rather it's used as an umbrella term for a variety of different groups that had similar languages and customs, but they were also different enough to be considered their own languages and customs. In any event, this particular group of Coalticans believed the foreigners to have supernatural powers based on nothing more than their, well, this is kind of awkward, their skin color.
What?
Meaning that, in this particular case, biological racism predates Darwinism. This group of Coalticans was judging people by the color of their skin centuries before Darwin was even born. While De Vaca and the others were slaves of the Coalticans, they were forced to heal the members of their tribe. Remember I said a moment ago that if you were considered a good healer, you would essentially just be kidnapped, enslaved, and forced to heal? Well, such happened to De Vaca and the others. The thing is, the Coalticans wanted De Vaca and the others to use tribal techniques to heal them, such things like blowing on a sickly person or waving your hand over the person to sort of make the disease vanish. After scoffing at such an idea, I mean, De Vaca was, after all, a conquistador, not a healer, he decided to give it a try anyway. Mostly because the Coalticans promised to starve him to death if he refused. De Vaca was in luck. Christians held similar ideas about hand gestures and medical treatments, some that we still see in megachurches today, right? The priest will make the sign of a cross over someone or touch their forehead and then everybody falls over. I don't know what that is, but everyone falls over and claims that they've been healed. So a group of ailing Coalticans were brought to Vaca and his companions, who proceeded to make the sign of the cross over them, say the Our Father and the Hail Mary, and commend their souls to the Christian God. One by one, each of them claimed to be cured by this treatment. The sign of the cross was the first symbol of Western occultism that these people had ever seen, and quite frankly, it blew their minds. Sometime later, Vaca and the others found themselves enslaved by the Alvares, which is another Coaltican tribe. Word of the foreigners' remarkable healing abilities had spread far and wide, and now the Alvares wanted to sample it. Some Alvares approached Castillo and asked him to cure the pain in their heads. Now, Castillo was a little hesitant to do this because he'd lived a rather sinful life, and he believed, at least along the line of the Donatists, that you actually had to be a morally good person in order to cure people. Like, if you were cheating on your taxes or cheating on your spouse, you couldn't heal anybody. But if you were paying your taxes and taking your spouse out to dinner, then you would be a successful healer. Such was medical understanding in Christian Europe at the time. Nonetheless, Castillo made the sign of the cross over them, commended their souls to the Christian God, and lo and behold, it was said to have cured their headaches. But here we meet several curiosities. What are we to make of the fact that, without any threat of violent force coming from the foreigners, these people adopted Christianity for what they believed to be its remarkable healing powers? Additionally, Vaca tells us that after every successful treatment, the people would become so overjoyed at having been healed that they would celebrate with a 3-day festival, which sometimes, depending on local custom, included peyote. Let's play a thought game. Let's suppose for a moment that these Alvares were one of the communities that Vaca describes as using peyote after each successful treatment. At what point does Christianity become a part of this indigenous psychedelic tradition? This Christianity was not riveted onto the locals by Vaca and the others. I mean, at the time, they weren't grand conquerors of what they believed to be some new world. They were abject slaves. Truly, at least in some cases, the locals found value in Christianity, and their adoption of the cross into their peyote ceremonies might very well represent the first Christianized indigenous psychedelic tradition in the Americas. And it all happened without a whisper of threat or violent force. A few things to say about this. Why did the locals adopt Christianity so readily? Of course, we can all point to the fact that many conquistadors forced Christianity on people with, a Bible in one hand and a sword in the other. That absolutely happened. But there's also another reason. And that reason has to do with how polytheism works. We today in the West, whether we're believers, atheists, agnostic, or whatever, we tend to view the world through a monotheistic lens. Which makes sense because we all grew up in a monotheistic culture. For us, adopting a new religious belief typically means giving up an older religious belief. So for example, if you're a Christian who converts to Judaism, well, you're no longer a Christian. In the same sense, if you're a Muslim who converts to Christianity, like Estebanico, well, you're no longer a Muslim. But polytheism is different. One need not give up the old gods in exchange for the new. Many First Nations peoples simply added Jesus to their already extensive pantheons of gods. History is far more complicated than the usual narratives we hear in psychedelic spaces. So if you're interested in a more nuanced approach to psychedelic history, I once again ask that you give this video a like and a share, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment to let me know what I could be doing better. I'd like to see this channel grow, and your feedback is important. And until we meet again, I'm Tom Hatsis, your psychedelic historian, reminding you that you free your mind by using your brain. Peace.